hppodcraft.com.
Editor's note: Alonzo Typer of Kingston, New York, was last seen and recognized on April 17, 1908, around noon at the Hotel Richmond in Batavia. He was the only survivor of an ancient Ulster County family and was 53 years old at the time of his disappearance. Mr. Typer was educated privately and at Columbia and Heidelberg universities. All his life was spent as a student, the field of his researches including many obscure and generally feared borderlands of human knowledge. His papers on vampirism, ghouls, and poltergeist phenomena were privately printed after rejection by many publishers. The diary herewith presented was allegedly found in the ruins of a large country house near Attica, New York, which had borne a curiously sinister reputation for generations before its collapse. The edifice was very old, antedating the general white settlement of the region, and had formed the home of a strange and secretive family named Vanderheil, which had migrated from Albany in 1746 under a curious cloud of witchcraft suspicion. The structure probably dated from about 1760.
Those were some selections from the first few paragraphs of The Diary of Alonzo Typer by H.P. Lovecraft and William Lumley.
Intriguing. I'm excited.
Who are you?
I'm Chris Lackey. I'm the co-host of the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast. And who are you?
I am Chad Pfeiffer, and we're here at hppodcraft.com.
First, I want to do a correction before we get into the story.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, Chad, you were talking about the guys from Mad Max Road Warrior being rough trade, and
you were talking about that, and then I threw out rough trade as
you did.
What I believed it to be called.
No.
And we were corrected on that.
Yeah.
Right?
A listener called. He didn't call in. He wrote in and said, I love the show, but that's not what rough trade is, and explained to us.
What is rough trade?
So rough trade is, there's a whole long history with trade in general. Trade is a Victorian phrase. They think it was Polarian origin, which meant somebody would get with somebody else for money, but not necessarily getting paid for it, but to hang out with them so they can kind of mooch off of their being wealthy. Typically, this would be a gay man, and then he would hang out with a less well-off, sometimes straight man, but not necessarily straight man, that would hang out with a gay man so that he could eat at nice restaurants and live in a nice place, all that stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So that, this is old. This is an old type of thing. Now, rough trade is a more modern thing, and that usually means the guy who is cruising for another dude. This dude is very masculine and kind of thuggish, and will.
The guy who's doing the cruising?
No, the guy that's getting picked up.
Oh, okay.
The guy who's getting picked up. Now, sometimes it's for money, not necessarily for money. It could just be no. I'm sorry. It is for money. That does this for money. He gets with the gay guy. Supposedly he's straight. And
okay.
And then he will, have sex with him. But there's this kind of danger involved because the guy is very manly. He's not girly. He's
right.
Like very kind of working class tough guy. And there is supposed to be some kind of excitement in the fact of you don't know whether this guy is going to have sex with you or beat you up.
Right.
Or both. Who knows?
So that's where the rough would come.
That's where the rough comes in from the rough trade. But
you said a minute ago, you said it was of Polari origin?
Yeah. Now, Polari,
I don't know what...
That's like this old cant slang that was used in Britain mostly by actors, circus performers, criminals, prostitutes, showmen. So it's kind of slang. It was basically the slang.
Has nothing to do with Polaris.
It has nothing to do with Polaris. No.
Trying to bring it back around here.
Polari is actually it derives from parley, which is to talk.
Oh, okay.
And that's where it comes from.
Parlez-vous. So correction made.
I just find all subcultures interesting, that there are these languages and ideas and practices that go on, and most of us are completely unaware of it, and I think it's really cool.
And that's a good introduction to this story, actually, which is about obscure and generally feared borderlands of human knowledge and the people who are specialists in that.
Our protagonist of the story is this guy named Alonzo Typer. Alonzo is from New York, and he studies occult stuff around the world.
That's right. And those opening paragraphs were read by Jason Lee, sometimes goes by Jackson Lee. He's a good friend of mine. Folks who watch anime might know him. He's done a ton of titles. Read or Die was a movie that I did a voice for that he was in, and also Dead Leaves was one.
Yeah, Dead Leaves is weird.
Dead Leaves is very weird, but I got to play a character in that named 666, which is the greatest thing to have listed on your IMDb page ever. Jason's really good, got a great voice, and so I was glad he could join us for the show finally. I interrupted, though. You were saying this is our kind of ghost researcher, Alonzo Typer.
Yeah, but not just ghost. I mean, he's into vampires. He's into ghouls. He's any supernatural monster creature kind of thing. Even the other academic people don't deal with him anymore.
He resigned from the Society for Psychical Research in 1902. They thought he was a little out there. It's an odd protagonist for Lovecraft. He usually has academics that are wildly interested in supernatural types of things, but you rarely hear about them writing papers on vampires.
It could be that this is, because this is William Lumley. This is a team up. Now, William Lumley was basically, as far as I can tell, he was illiterate. He couldn't really write very well at all.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I mean, he could write basically, but not really. Joshi keeps saying that this guy was just sort of a really, really, really bad writer, even in the most basic sense. Lovecraft was just a fan of his, liked him as a guy, even though he was sort of nuts.
Yeah, so this guy, William Lumley, and I don't know how much, because we get a lot of this from letters, and so I don't know how much of it is just hyperbole or what's true, what's not, but apparently William Lumley believed that Lovecraft's creations were real.
Yeah.
And that Lovecraft, not without even his own knowledge, was actually doing the bidding of Cthulhu and Nyarlathotep and sort of channeling their messages into this fiction.
Yeah, there's a quote here where Lovecraft says in a letter, talking about Lumley, he says, "We may think we're writing fiction, and may even, absurd thought, disbelieve what we write, but at the bottom we are telling the truth in spite of ourselves, serving unwittingly as the mouthpieces of Tsathoggua, Crom, Cthulhu, and other pleasant outside gentry."
Wow.
Yeah, the poor, I mean, and Lovecraft did this rewrite for him just to kind of get him into writing, and I'm not quite sure why. He didn't do it for money. He just did it for free. But then frickin' Lumley went around and sold it to Weird Tales for $75 and didn't cut Lovecraft in on it at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Lovecraft didn't even want the money. I don't know. I think he's just being kind. You know, he clearly from his letters, Lovecraft thinks that Lumley's kind of a chump.
Yeah.
But he's just such a sweet guy and so eager that he likes him.
Yeah.
So I think in that letter he says, I don't like to make fun of him, even though he had just been making fun of him.
The whole letter.
But it's interesting that somebody even in Lovecraft's lifetime acted this way. It's just that I've never had a lot of love for, all of this is real. You know, like I've never read an Agatha Christie novel and thought, I bet she murders people. You know what I mean? Like I'm able to understand that.
Well, that's funny that you say that,
people
because
are creative.
Lumley liked to say, well, he said that he visited China and Nepal and did all this sort of occult investigation himself. But in reality, he was a watchman for the Agrico Chemical Company in Buffalo for his entire life. Like that was his job. He was a security guard.
See, that makes me really like him too. You know?
Dude, I worked as a security guard for a little while, and I got to tell you, when I was in Pittsburgh, and it's a crap job, and you just either walk around by yourself or you sit around by yourself. But on a rare occasion, there's two security guards together in the same spot. And one night, it was really cold. It was in the winter in Pittsburgh, and there was a ton of snow on the ground. And this guy who I was partnered up with was a World War II vet. So this was this must have been the summer of 92. It was the summer of 90, or no, it wasn't summer, it was the winter. It was the winter of 92. 91, 92, and he told me all of these crazy Pacific, because he fought in the Pacific stories, about how there was this, him and this guy Chickbone were the only survivors in his platoon, because they kept bringing new guys in. It was really creepy, but his stories were pretty fantastic, and I'm not sure how much of his World War II stories were actually true. Like he said, there was this one Japanese soldier that was on opium that he shot with his rifle 17 times before the guy dropped.
Oh my God.
Now, I don't know about you, but in the heat of battle, do you think that you're really counting how many shots that you're firing? Like, especially when it gets above 3 or 4?
I doubt that you're counting. I mean, although later you could probably...
That's true. Maybe
know how many you shot.
Yeah. Like maybe he had to change his magazine so many times and he figured it out.
Yeah.
But
even so, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I could picture working with Bill Lumley here and thinking, him telling all these stories. Oh, when I went to China, I met with this Tibetan monk.
Yeah,
man,
you got a point there. I worked at a warehouse with a guy that was full of tall tales. About his exploits while he would deliver like candy bars to the ice cream place in town, and he said that the girl there would, every time she saw him, she'd close up shop and like they'd go into the back, and there's no way this was happening. It was like a 16-year-old girl, and this guy had like no teeth and just a mustache. But I mean, any time that me or my buddy Lyle got to go on a trip with him on a delivery, we took that chance because his stories were crazy. They weren't attached to reality in any way, shape, or form. This guy was like, everywhere he went, women just took their shirts off to flash him. Never when I was with him, this never happened. Apparently my presence, was messing up his.
You had teeth, dude. It was the teeth that scared off the ladies.
This character of Lumley is coming into more focus for me, and I like him more and more.
You were speaking that this character doesn't seem like a typical Lovecraft character. So maybe from Lumley's very rough story, Lovecraft took that from it.
And I think that's what it is, right? He wrote this, Lovecraft saw it and said, oh, come on, buddy, you should do this and that, and he tried to help him out.
Yeah, exactly.
Because definitely this is Lovecraft's writing.
And when we get to the end, we'll talk about how I'm not going to even wait till the end. He comes to this, he wants to go check out.
Yeah, why don't we just blow through this thing real quick? So we know from the beginning that Alonzo, he's going to stay overnight in a haunted house. Actually, much longer than overnight. He's been on the track of all these primordial mysteries, and he's coming here to this old house just to stay and learn. Yeah, the
Vanderheels house. And this introduction in the beginning, the editor's note, gives some background on it and how this family was from Albany, and they moved from Albany in 1746 because they were witches, and they were evading being prosecuted by the Puritans and all that stuff.
So they built this house around. They built this house 60.
Yeah, and then it's
around the house, a little village popped up, right?
Right.
The village that arose around this mansion got the name Chorazin. Every time I look at the word, I think chorizo.
Chorazin?
I'll say Chorazin, sure.
Okay.
Maybe it's Corazine or something like that, but I'm going to say Chorazin. Behind the village, which you can see from the Vanderheil house, is a steep hill that has this ring of ancient standing stones.
Yeah.
That the Iroquois they didn't like, and we don't know where those came from. So the house has only been around since 1760, still old, but there's this far more ancient structure up on that hill.
Yeah.
And we know from the preface to the diary as well that around 1872, the entire household of Vanderheil's servants, everybody, suddenly and simultaneously disappeared.
Just gone.
Now, this guy, John Eagle, in the current day, really funny description of John Eagle. It says, John Eagle, the Indian-like villager who found the diary. His name's John Eagle. I don't think he's Indian-like. You know?
Well, yeah, they said a lot of Indian people settled around Chorazin, so there's it's mixed. It's Indian and white people mixed. And probably some slaves as well.
Right. I forgot to mention in that opening sentence, it says Alonzo Typer was last seen and recognized on April 17th. And I thought last seen and recognized was such a cool phrase. People will always say so-and-so was last seen.
Oh, right.
It's more correct to say he was last seen and recognized because
exactly
people that don't know who you are will see you and it's of no significance to them. Exactly. But it's also slightly sinister for a Lovecraft story because the minute I read that, I go, oh, so did he go into somebody else's body? Or did he jump through time? I mean, it just set up an expectation for me that didn't pay off, but I still thought it was a neat bit of phrase.
No, this was another story for me that I was really into the setup of it, and I was really interested, and I was curious about the mystery of it, and then when we got into the actual meat of it, I was pretty disappointed.
Yeah. One last thing in the preface to the diary that I really liked in terms of writing, it said, those who first opened the vault, this is a vault where they found this diary of Alonzo after he had disappeared. Those who first opened the vault declared that the place smelled like the snake house at a zoo.
Yeah, that was good. I like that.
Really good. It's so specific. I almost wish that it wasn't, because I know that they have the suggestion that the family was subtly squamous, and
just kind of serpentine.
Yeah. But even if it wasn't related, it's so specific. And you might not know that smell, but if you do, it's like, it's that hot kind of. It doesn't quite smell like manure, but it's some kind of.
It's very kind of acidic smelling.
Yeah.
Poo smelling. It's gross. But one thing that we failed to mention is that the house has collapsed. It's a big pile of rubble after it's been investigated by Typer. Well, Typer went to go check it out, and then the whole place collapsed. He was nowhere to be found. His body's nowhere to be found. Just this book, his diary.
Right. And in the diary, it starts on April 17th, 1908, when he arrives at the house. And he knows that he's about 2 weeks away from Walpurgisnacht, which is when he thinks this house is going to be at its most potent spiritually or whatever.
Right. And that's the May Eve. That's before the spring equinox. The night before.
last day of April. He gets in there. The place is very creepy, very scary. There's lots of description. He says the few inhabitants of the town are no better than idiots. One of them saluted him in a queer way as if he knew me.
Yeah.
He keeps mentioning how things are very familiar, and I was like, jeez.
Again?
I bet you're related to these people, right? I mean,
that's
right away. He gets into the house, he unpacks, he gets his video cameras and his EVP recorders and his
he doesn't
night vision
get any of
goggles.
those things.
He doesn't have
Chad.
any of those things.
It's
but he goes upstairs, he gets a front room, and he camps out, and he starts to feel crazy things right away. On his first day, he's got a journal entry that says,
I am conscious of several presences in this house. One in particular is decidedly hostile toward me. A malevolent will which is seeking to break down my own and overcome me. I must not countenance this for an instant, but must use all my forces to resist it. It is appallingly evil and definitely non-human. I think it must be allied to powers outside Earth, powers in the spaces behind time and beyond the universe. It towers like a colossus, bearing out what is said in the Aklo writings. There is such a feeling of vast size connected with it that I wonder if these chambers can contain its bulk. And yet it has no visible bulk. Its age must be unutterably vast, shockingly, indescribably so.
what's that reference to the Aklo writings? Have we discussed that before on the show?
I think we have. Well, Lovecraft uses it. He used it before also in Dunwich Horror. Wilbur Whatley was doing some Aklo. But it was originally Arthur Machen and the White People that talked about the language Aklo being spoken by these by the white people who are. We have to
and it's just a language. It's an ancient language that a lot of these things are written in. Spells and that kind
supernatural language of some kind,
The next day, Alonzo didn't sleep very well. The next day, as he's walking down the stairs, he feels like he's pushed from behind.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be by the wind, but when he turns, he sees the dissolving outlines of a gigantic black paw, which just made me laugh out loud. I don't know why.
It made me think of Imprisoned with the Pharaohs, Under the Pyramids.
It did, it made me think of that. I guess it also made me think of just a gigantic black paw and just kind of what a ridiculous image that is, ghostly black paw. Because is it like a cat's paw where it's got little pads on it?
That's what I was just going to ask you. Were you thinking of it like a little kitty paw, like a giant kitty paw, or were you thinking of it like just sort of a monster, long-fingered claw paw?
I was thinking of all of those things.
A bear
claw? It would be funny if it was just a little tiny kitten's paw. It wasn't even actually gigantic at all. It just goes, ow, what's that on my neck? Just a tiny little paw.
Aww.
Well, he's exploring the house. He sees, the portraits of all of the family disturb him.
Yeah. They're all really creepy, and he kind of goes through them. His knowledge of this history, and he keeps referring to this person V blank,
right.
And we don't ever know who V is, but V had some information about this house and told him about this family.
He says he looks at a portrait of that frightful hybrid Joris, spawned in 1773 by Dirk's youngest daughter. I like sentences like that because I expected there to be a follow-up, some explanation, and there wasn't. All we know is that there was some guy named Joris, and he's a hybrid of some kind.
A hybrid, yeah. It's like, well, hybrid of what? Does that mean mixed race, or does it mean like mixed species? Is that... Because they keep talking about in the story how they have sort of serpentine qualities to them in portraits. So they're painted these ways. And he talks about one of the portraits where the artists obviously try to make them as human-looking as possible.
Right. Later he says something like that which is human is more horrible than that which is non-human. So even though there's like non-human expressions in these people, it's what's human about them that's more horrifying.
That's more creepy. That freaks them out.
It's good writing.
Yeah.
Another thing about the portraits that made me laugh is there was a part where it talks about a woman from the late 18th century, and it said, the faces of classic beauty, yet with the most fiendishly evil expression. Not merely callousness, greed, and cruelty, but some quality hideous beyond human comprehension. Can you convey all that in one expression? That's pretty amazing. While I was reading it, I was screwing up my face trying to get, how could I convey greed, cruelty,
I wish you were
Callousness
recording
and
that.
evil.
I wish that I could see you attempting to capture that expression. Well, he also discovers behind the wall a secret passageway that leads down to the basement. It's just sort of there's no steps to it. It's just sort of a chute, kind of a stone chute.
Yeah.
And he's like, what can that be for? Doesn't
Laundry.
know. Must be laundry.
He spends a lot of time setting up atmosphere and that sort of thing.
But he gets down to the cellar. That's what.
Yeah, he gets down to the cellar.
There's this big, heavy iron door with a big padlock on it. It's a vault, a big vault.
Yeah.
And he thinks he hears something in the vault, like something big moving around, like like he says, like it would be a giant snake, just kind of pushing up and sliding up on against it. And he's also compelled to open it up for some reason. He doesn't know why. It's all familiar, blah blah blah, because obviously he's descended from these people, and we're not going to pretend that we don't know what's going to happen. He goes at night. I'm going to go to sleep and not worry about it. But then we get the next journal entry, and he says, well, I couldn't sleep, so I had to go down and check it out some more. That's where all the creepy things were going to happen, and that's when he really hears it. But then that claw thing comes up from behind him again, and there's a bunch of this.
It goes
for a
on
long
and on.
time.
There's a cool when he talks about that sound behind the vault door. He says there was a damnable slithering as of a vast serpent or sea beast dragging its monstrous folds over a paved floor. That really creeps me out.
There's some good bits in here. There's some good writing, and I feel like maybe Lovecraft took a crappy idea and just sort of sweetened it a bit.
I don't want to linger on this too much. We're kind of skipping around, but when he's down in that cellar, he finds a number of Lovecraftian tomes. Right.
Yeah.
And he
there's
starts flipping through them.
A Greek Necronomicon, the Norman French Livre d'Iban, Disfirmus Mysterious, all that jazz.
Book of Iban. Yeah. And they're all from Holland, so some of them must be written in the Dutch language.
No, and he talks about at this
he
point
finds a drawing there too, right?
Oh, right. That's the kind of a big deal. He describes the drawing as being a squid-like creature, but also that it's got great yellow eyes and it has some kind of human form to it. So that makes me think he's throwing in some Cthulhu.
Right.
And he also mentions that one of the descriptions talks about all these old civilizations, and one of them is Yan Ho. Now, I don't know if you remember from Through the Gates of the Silver Key, but Yan Ho was the forbidden city on the plateau of Leng.
Oh, I didn't realize. Yeah, I guess I didn't make that connection when I was reading it. Good bit of writing here that's really a good example of Lovecraft. After he's been reading all of these things and learning, he says,
truly there are terrible primal arcana of earth, which had better be left unknown and unevoked. Dread secrets which have nothing to do with man, and which man may learn only in exchange for peace and sanity. Cryptic truths which make the knower evermore an alien among his kind and cause him to walk alone on earth. Likewise are there dread survivals of things older and more potent than man, things that have blasphemously straggled down through the aeons to ages never meant for them, monstrous entities that have lain sleeping endlessly in incredible crypts and remote caverns outside the laws of reason and causation, and ready to be waked by such blasphemers as shall know their dark forbidden signs and furtive passwords.
It's great.
Yeah, good stuff.
Now, there's an Evil Dead kind of thing that happens to the protagonist when he tries to leave the house, right?
Yeah.
He goes outside, and all the briars that had been surrounding the place have closed. He can't get out.
Yeah, none of the roads, the pathways, all of them, they're all gone.
However, the path to that hill where the standing stones are, the briars will give way before him, but in that direction only.
Yeah.
That was a really neat detail, too.
It's super cool stuff.
What's Alonzo's plan? He's learned a lot about this family. This name keeps coming up, by the way, when he's researching the family, right? Slate?
Yeah. And he goes, it's familiar. Why is it familiar to me? I don't know.
I rolled my eyes. I mean, immediately I go, it's familiar to you because it's a family name, and you're related to these people. It's, come on. But what's his plan? What's going to happen? I mean, let's get to the end of this thing.
The gist of it is he feels compelled to find out what's in this vault and to understand these secrets. And he knows that there's a key somewhere in the house, and he's compelled to find the key. And he finds the key, and he's going to open up the vault. And
yeah, it reminded me of a video game a little bit. You must find the key.
Right. Yeah, and he searches around the house. There's lots of locked doors in this place, and it comes to April 30th.
It's Walpurgis Eve.
Yes.
He's ready to go. He's basically got some kind of ritual he's going to do, or chant. It's a chant, right? He's learned this chant from the books, and it's going to wake up whatever this thing is in the vault. There's like a god or some kind of monster or gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Of some kind, and he knows the chant, and if he says the chant, he'll wake it up, And then he also has some words he's learned, the 7 lost signs of terror, the words of fear. They don't really tell you what those are. No. But he thinks if he has those, he can...
fight back, whatever it is.
Fight back, or bind the thing, or something along those lines.
But of course, that's not what's going to happen. We all it seemed really obvious to me what was going to happen. And he finds out that right as he's going to perform this ritual, that the townspeople sort of all come around, and he could see them. There's a big storm going on. There's lightning, all this, and he could see that they're all gathering around to kind of be a part of this or observe this big ritual.
Yeah, they're out there chanting, Shub-Niggurath, the goat with 1,000 young, all that stuff. But that's not what bothers him the most.
But the worst thing is within the house. Even at this height, I have begun to hear sounds from the cellar. It is the padding and muttering and slithering and muffled reverberations within the vault. Memories come and go. That name of Adrian Slate pounds oddly at my consciousness. Dirk Vanderheil's son-in-law, his child, old Dirk's granddaughter, and Abaddon Corey's great-granddaughter. Merciful God. At last I know where I saw that name. I know, and am transfixed with horror. All is lost. The key has begun to feel warm as my left hand nervously clutches it. At times, that vague quickening or pulsing is so distant that I can almost feel the living metal move. It came from Yan Ho for a terrible purpose, and to me has descended the hideous task of fulfilling that purpose. My courage and curiosity wane. I know the horror that lies beyond that iron door. What if Klaes Vanderheil was my ancestor? Need I expiate his nameless sin? I will not, I swear. I will not. Too late. Cannot help self. Black paws materialize. Am dragged away toward the cellar.
That's the end of the story. Hilarious ending.
Yeah.
He was still writing as the Black Paws were dragging him away. Apparently.
Yeah.
Too late.
I am dragged away. Can you imagine that being being dragged by a giant monster, and that what you would be doing is trying to write in a journal?
I can't imagine it.
No.
Wait, my diary.
No, just this last word. Oh, let me put the ellipses on the end here.
I wanted to finish this sentence. People need to know that. And we were jumping around in this thing, but he kind of realized that his ancestor who started this process of waking up the old one in the earth couldn't finish it in his lifetime, but because he had started it, he or one of his descendants was going to finish it.
Yeah.
It's sort of his ancestral duty. He's compelled to do these things.
Yeah.
Much like, the protagonist of Shadow over Innsmouth is compelled to go home and that sort of thing. So it's got all the Lovecraftian tropes and a fairly unsatisfying end, but I think there's a lot of good writing.
There is.
And, good examples of atmosphere building.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lovecraft's really, he's at his peak of his game right now, and he's just, unfortunately, wasn't writing big stuff anymore. Because, he's sick and getting close to dying, so he wasn't feeling well, he wasn't doing well, he was just trying to get by and probably wasn't motivated to write really cool stories like he had a few years ago. So helping out people was just sort of what he was into, and that's kind of the work that we've been seeing and will be seeing up until almost the very end.
Yeah. So I don't know, I liked it. It was a fun read. It's not too long of a story, and made me laugh in equal parts shudder.
Yeah, there's some good creepy stuff in here. It's just it's the silly ending and the giant paw stuff that we could really do without.
All right, well, we learned about rough trade today. That's really the most important part.
We did learn about rough trade.
Well, next week we are going to cover one which people keep asking us if we're going to cover, In the Walls of Eryx. Somebody asked us a trivia question a couple of years ago. What is the one Lovecraft story that is the whole thing is set on another planet.
And it's
I
the
had
story.
no idea what he was talking about, but
Yeah.
and he said, "Oh, it's in the Walls of Eryx," but I haven't read it yet. So.
I have not read it either, so I'm looking forward to it. I know this is a big one. I'm saving these last few Lovecraft stories, which are In the Walls of Eryx and The Night Ocean, which I haven't read either. And unfortunately, after that, all we have is The Haunter in the Dark.
Yeah, we'll finish up with The Haunter of the Dark, and then you and I will do a couple of wrap-up episodes. Getting close to the end now. Unfortunately, you're going to be out of town, right? So we're skipping a week.
We're skipping a week, just prolong the end just a little bit longer. We're taking a week off. I do want to remind folks, though, that again, on June 2nd, in Manchester at the Traveling Man, I will be doing a signing of the Lovecraft Anthology Volume 2 by Self-Made Hero. Please come down. At 1 o'clock, I'll be signing. 3 o'clock, there will be a talk that I'm doing. But also, all day at the store, they're going to be playing Lovecraft-themed board games. So, Elder Sign, Arkham Horror, Mansions of Madness, all that type of stuff. It's going to be a crazy Lovecraft day.
Shoots and ladders.
What? No, not shoots and ladders.
God, I am hilarious.
All right. Until next time, keep your feet on the ground and your head in the clouds. No, I'm sorry.
We'll be back within the Walls of Eryx in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody, for listening today. Thanks, Jason Lee, for doing such a great job reading.
Very good. Obvious professional.
That's right. And that's all we have. I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
I'm Chris Lackey, and you've been listening to the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
At hppodcraft.com.
hppodcraft.com.